The day began like any other in the Castillo mansion, where Lucas lived surrounded by luxury. He, the heir to one of the largest industries in the country, knew no shortage. Everything around him exuded power and wealth, from the finely chosen furniture to the panoramic view of São Paulo that stretched out through the glass wall of the living room. However, behind this empire, Lucas hid a void that not all the money in the world could fill. At 35, he was admired in business circles for his strategic mind and ability to multiply fortunes. But his personal life was falling apart. After his father's recent death, Lucas found himself heir to not only the family business, but also to immense loneliness. True friends were rare, and romantic relationships were almost non-existent. It all seemed like a facade to keep up appearances. Mariana, on the other hand, woke up early every day to catch the bus that took her to the Castillo mansion. At 29 years old, she faced a tough routine. Black, born and raised in the outskirts of the city, Mariana knew what it was like to struggle to survive. Being a maid in the home of one of the richest families in Brazil provided her with a steady salary, but at the cost of her self-esteem and freedom. She spent her days cleaning rooms that would never be hers, organizing the lives of people who didn't even know her full name. Lucas treated her as if she were invisible. To him, Mariana was just one of the many people who kept his life in order without him having to worry about the details. As she scrubbed the cold kitchen floor, she thought about her sick mother and her younger brother who was still in school. Mariana was the main breadwinner for her family, and it weighed heavily on her shoulders every day. She dreamed of a different life, but reality didn't give her many choices. That morning, Lucas and Mariana's routines followed their predictable course until something unexpected happened. That world of contrast between wealth and poverty, opulence and struggle, about to collide, would change both of their lives forever. However, at that moment, neither of them knew it. Night fell over the city, and the Castillo mansion, silent and imposing, seemed to keep the secrets of its inhabitants. Lucas, sitting in his luxurious living room, stared at the glass of whiskey in front of him. The amber liquid reflected the soft lights of the room, but he found no solace. Since his father's death, that feeling of emptiness had only increased, making the pressure of being the successor to an empire unbearable. The endless meetings, the strategic decisions, the social events, it all seemed meaningless. For the first time, Lucas questioned whether this was the life he really wanted. The weight of expectation and the coldness of the business world were beginning to suffocate him. Tired, he got up and walked to the kitchen in search of something to distract him, perhaps a snack to chase away his dark thoughts. It was then that he met Mariana, who was finishing putting away the dishes. It was rare for them to cross paths like this. Her presence in the house was almost invisible to him, but that night, something compelled him to observe her for a few seconds longer than usual. Her hair tied in a hasty bun, her hands tired from so much scrubbing and organizing, and the expression on her face revealed a life very different from his own. Mariana was startled when she noticed Lucas' presence in the kitchen. She hadn't expected to see him there, and for a moment, she thought he might be irritated to find her so late at work. But to her surprise, he approached her in a different way. There was something in his gaze that seemed less distant, as if, for a moment, he wasn't the boss and she wasn't the maid. "Sorry, I didn't know you were still here," Lucas commented, his voice sounding gentler than Mariana had ever heard it before. She shook her head, hasty in her apology. "I'll be leaving now, sir. I was just finishing up the arrangements." There was an uncomfortable silence between them, but somehow neither of them moved to end the moment. Lucas, on impulse, poured himself another glass of whiskey and, instead of leaving, stayed close by, as if he was trying to prolong the interaction. "Sometimes," he began, without looking directly at Mariana, "sometimes it seems like all the effort is in vain. Everything we do. For what?" Mariana was surprised by the statement. She never imagined hearing something like that from Lucas, a man who seemed to have everything money could buy. For a moment, the barrier between the two worlds seemed less rigid. "I think everyone feels that way from time to time," she replied hesitantly but sincerely. "It's just that some of us have no choice but to keep going, even when it seems pointless." Lucas smiled slightly, a melancholic smile. Mariana was even more surprised. He, who had always maintained a rigid and distant posture, now seemed like a man lost in his own thoughts. The drink had softened his defenses. "And you, Mariana? What keeps you going?" he asked, this time looking directly at her, as if he really wanted to know. Mariana felt a wave of nervousness. She didn't know if she should answer such a personal question, but something about Lucas's vulnerability made her speak. "My family," he said, looking down. "I do this for them. My mother is sick, and my brother is still too young to help. So I do what I have to do." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, they both felt the unlikely connection that was forming between them. Lucas, without thinking much, moved a little closer, and that small distance that still separated them seemed to decrease even more. The tension in the air was palpable. The silence that followed was full of unspoken meanings. Lucas, driven by fatigue, loneliness, and alcohol, did something that would change both of their lives forever. He leaned over and, on impulse, touched Mariana's hand. The gesture, initially hesitant, became firmer when he realized that she did not move away. Mariana, for her part, froze. There was a part of her that wanted to retreat, to remember her position in the house, her role, but at the same time, the way Lucas looked at her, as if he finally saw the real her, stirred something inside her. It was as if, for a moment, she wasn't just the maid. In that brief moment of vulnerability and need, Lucas and Mariana's worlds collided irrevocably. The night enveloped them in an unexpected complicity, and what began as an unlikely conversation ended with an act that would mark both of their lives forever. The next morning, the sun came through the kitchen window of the Castillo mansion, warming the room with its golden rays. Mariana arrived early, as always. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the aroma of the warm bread she was starting to prepare. But, despite the familiarity of the routine, that morning was different. Lucas's unexpected touch the night before still pulsated in her mind. Mariana tried to focus on her tasks, but her mind wandered between confusion and excitement. What had happened? That man, who had always been a distant and authoritative figure, now occupied her thoughts in a way she had never imagined. It was a mix of emotions: fear, hope, desire, and a disturbing insecurity. Was it possible that he saw her differently now? Or had it all been nothing more than a moment of weakness? As she prepared breakfast, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation took hold of her. What if Lucas treated her with indifference, like before? The fear of breaking the fragile connection they had established kept her from relaxing. However, there was something inside her that yearned for more, something that asked her to explore this new dynamic between them. In the dining room, Lucas was already sitting at the table, looking thoughtful. He glanced at Mariana when she entered, and a slight smile appeared on his face. That expression, which had seemed rare before, now seemed almost natural. Mariana felt butterflies in her stomach, a mixture of nervousness and hope. "Good morning, Mariana," he said, and surprisingly, his tone was warm. "Good morning, sir," she replied, feeling the need to maintain formality even though the rules seemed to have changed. Lucas watched her as she prepared coffee. He was restless, thinking about how the previous night had changed everything. Her touch made him realize that there was more to life than just money and business. He wanted to know more about Mariana, not just as a housekeeper, but as a person. "Do you have any plans for today?" Lucas asked, breaking the silence. Mariana hesitated. She wasn't used to being questioned about her plans, especially by someone like Lucas. "Not really. Just work. Working is important, but sometimes it's good to have some time for yourself too," he commented, sincerely. Mariana smiled shyly. He seemed genuinely interested, and that made her feel valued. "I like working, but maybe I should take some time for myself. It might be refreshing. Why don't you go to a park or somewhere you like?" Lucas suggested, as if he was thinking of something that could bring joy to both of them. She was surprised by the proposal. She never imagined that her boss would suggest a break. The idea of spending some time away from her routine made her excited, but it also made her question her responsibilities. "I don't know. There's a lot to do here. I can take care of some things." "What do you think?" he insisted, and his tone was encouraging. Mariana, after a brief moment of doubt, agreed. The possibility of going out, even for a few hours, felt like a liberation. The rest of the day would unfold into something she hadn't expected, something that would make her feel more alive. With that, Lucas decided he would do something for her. Throughout the morning, he worked on meetings and phone calls, but his mind always returned to Mariana. He was eager to know what she would choose to do with her free day. When it was finally time for her to leave, Mariana was nervous but also excited. Lucas walked her to the door. "Enjoy your day, Mariana. You deserve it," he said, and his gaze was genuine. "Thank you, sir. I'll try," she replied, feeling a little lighter. As she left the mansion, Mariana noticed that the world outside looked different. The sky was bluer, and the people on the streets seemed more vibrant. She walked to the park, her heart beating fast and her mind full of thoughts about what the day might bring. The connection she had formed with Lucas the night before was fresh in her mind, and the act of having a day off made her begin to see herself differently. The freedom she had longed for so long seemed closer than ever. Meanwhile, Lucas returned to his work, but his mind was far from the numbers and graphs. He realized that Mariana had become more than just an employee. He wanted to get to know her, to find out about her hopes and dreams. He found himself wondering how he could support her, even though their lives were so different. The day passed slowly, and Mariana enjoyed every moment. She visited the park, breathed in the fresh air, and let herself feel the sun on her face. And even while she was there, she couldn't stop thinking about Lucas and what could come of their connection. The idea that there could be something more between them filled her with ecstasy and fear at the same time. As night fell, Mariana returned home, already feeling transformed. Not only had she enjoyed her day, but she had also realized that her life could be different. A new chapter was about to open, and she was more than willing to explore what that meant. The next morning, Mariana woke up with mixed emotions. The sun streamed through the bedroom curtains, illuminating her face as she sat up in bed, remembering the experiences of the previous day. The freedom of having explored the city and the lightness of her soul contrasted with the reality that awaited her in the Castillo mansion. She felt that the connection with Lucas, although new, could turn into something profound. However, doubt still lingered in her thoughts. Breakfast at the mansion had a different feel. Lucas was present, but neither of them avoided mentioning the intensity of what had happened the night before. Mariana struggled to maintain her composure, serving coffee and bread, while Lucas seemed distracted, his eyes lost in thought. "You seem more cheerful today, Mariana," Lucas commented, breaking the silence. The smile he offered was genuine, and she couldn't help but return it. "I feel different," she admitted hesitantly. "Yesterday was special." Lucas nodded, but his smile faded slightly. He felt different too, but he didn't know how to express it. What had started as a moment of vulnerability now turned into a growing anticipation, a tension that couldn't be ignored. During coffee, an unexpected message arrived on Lucas's cell phone. It was from his assistant, reminding him of an important meeting that would take place later. He stood up abruptly, as if the reminder had broken the bubble of intimacy that had formed between him and Mariana. "Sorry, I have to go." "This meeting is crucial," Lucas said, quickly picking up his documents. Mariana felt a pang of disappointment, but she understood. Obligations were always lurking, like shadows. "All right, sir. I hope everything goes well," Mariana replied, forcing a smile as he left. As soon as Lucas left, a sense of loss washed over her. What should have been a time of growth now felt like a growing distance. But life went on. Mariana devoted herself to her tasks, trying to take her mind off her worries. However, with each passing moment, she couldn't help but think about Lucas. When the afternoon arrived, Mariana was in the laundry room, sorting clothes, when the door opened and Lucas came in. He seemed more relaxed, without the weight of obligations. Mariana felt her heart race when she saw him. "Can I help you?" he asked, a smile on his lips. "Not really, but thank you," she replied, trying to maintain formality, although the desire to get closer to him made her want to let go of the barrier. Lucas watched her as she worked. He noticed the way her hair fell over her face and the way she moved gracefully through her clothes. Something inside him longed to break the formality and connect again. "What are you doing tonight?" he asked, his voice hesitant. Mariana stopped, surprised. Nothing in particular, just work and go home. Why? I thought we could go to a restaurant. Something to celebrate your little release yesterday, he suggested, a glint of anticipation in his eyes. Mariana felt butterflies in her stomach. The idea of going out with Lucas was both exciting and terrifying. She hesitated, knowing that it could change everything between them. But at the same time, she couldn't ignore the opportunity to spend more time with him. I would love to, he finally replied, letting out a sincere smile. The night arrived, and Mariana prepared herself carefully. She chose a simple dress, but one that made her feel good. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she noticed that the emotion was evident on her face. That night could be a turning point in her life, and she was determined to enjoy every moment. When she arrived at the restaurant, Lucas was already waiting for her. He was dressed casually but elegantly, and his smile lit up the room. Mariana felt relieved to see him. "You look stunning," Lucas commented, and his words made her feel alive. The conversation flowed naturally. They laughed, shared stories, and discovered common interests. Every moment they spent together made their connection stronger. It was as if the outside world didn't exist, and all that mattered was this moment. But as the night wore on, the tension between them began to intensify. Lucas couldn't take his eyes off Mariana, and she felt her heart race with each glance. It was a sense of discovery, as if each small gesture revealed more about them. When their hands accidentally touched on the table, a jolt of electricity ran through the air. Finally, after a long conversation and glasses of wine, Lucas hesitated, looked deeply into Mariana's eyes and said, "I feel like there is something special between us, something I didn't expect." Mariana, her heart racing, simply nodded, and without thinking twice, she leaned towards him. Lucas did the same, and in an instant, their lips touched softly. The kiss was sweet and hesitant, but it carried a repressed passion. At that moment, everything changed. Mariana felt that, despite the social differences and the challenges that lay ahead, there was something powerful between them. The kiss was confirmation that they were ready to face the consequences that lay ahead, even if society and their role said otherwise. The night ended in a mix of euphoria and confusion. When Mariana returned home, the kiss with Lucas was still dancing in her mind. The world seemed more vibrant, every sound clearer, every color more intense. But, as excitement enveloped her, a cloud of worry began to form inside her. What did that kiss mean to them? And how would it affect their lives? The next morning, Mariana woke up earlier than usual, her heart racing. When she looked in the mirror, she saw an expression of hope mixed with uncertainty. The day promised to be long, and tasks at the mansion awaited her. But instead of letting herself get carried away by the routine, she allowed herself to dream a little more. What would happen if they could explore this new phase together? However, as the day wore on, the responsibilities began to pile up. As she cleaned the rooms in the mansion, Mariana couldn't help but let her thoughts wander back to Lucas. He was different, not just her boss, but a man who seemed to genuinely care about her. This was something she had never experienced before, and the idea fascinated and terrified her at the same time. However, reality set in when an unexpected message arrived. It was from Helena, Mariana's best friend, who also worked as an assistant at a law firm. Helena had a laid-back approach to life, and her message brought a smile to Mariana's face. "Let's go out tonight. I need some fun. What do you think?" Mariana hesitated. The desire to spend more time with Lucas fought against the need to have fun with a friend and take a break. But more than that, there was something inside her that told her she needed to talk to Helena about what had happened the night before. "Okay," Mariana replied, excited at the prospect of a night out. "I'll join you." Helena, always cheerful, responded quickly, full of emojis and exaltations. Mariana couldn't help but laugh. It was exactly what she needed. The prospect of distracting herself and discussing the new phase of her life made her feel lighter. But she also felt a pang of guilt for leaving Lucas aside. That night, as she was getting ready, Mariana looked in the mirror and made a promise to herself. She would enjoy every moment, but she would not let go of what she had started with Lucas. The connection was intense, and she was determined not to ignore it. The bar where they met was filled with laughter, music, and the inviting smell of food. Helena was excited, talking about her life and future plans. Mariana listened attentively, but her mind was elsewhere, imagining Lucas and what he was doing. "You're distracted, friend," Helena said, pulling Mariana closer. "What's wrong? Is someone on your mind?" Mariana hesitated, but the urge to share her secret took hold of her. "It's Lucas, we kissed." Helena's eyes widened, and a wide smile formed on her face. "Really? That's amazing. How do you feel about that?" "I don't know. I'm excited, but also scared. He's my boss, and our lives are so different," Mariana admitted, the insecurity visible in her tone. Helena encouraged her excitedly. "Don't let that stop you. Love knows no barriers. If you have feelings for him, go for it." Helena's words resonated within Mariana, but in the corner of her mind, the voice of reason began to scream. What if this didn't work? What if Lucas saw her as nothing more than a pastime? The weight of expectations became oppressive. The conversation continued to flow, but Mariana was increasingly aware that with every laugh and joke, reality was lurking. She couldn't avoid the situation for much longer. The consequences of her kiss were still unknown, but the vulnerability she felt towards Lucas was palpable. Finally, at the end of the night, when Mariana and Helena said goodbye, Mariana knew she needed to talk to Lucas. Her emotions were running high, and the only way to move forward was to deal with what had happened between them. The next morning, Mariana decided that the best way to approach Lucas was in a quieter environment. After finishing her morning chores, she prepared herself for the eventuality of seeing him. And, as if the universe was aligned in her favor, he walked into the kitchen shortly after. "Good morning, Mariana," Lucas said, smiling. There was something different about him, a sense of lightness, as if he, too, was pondering the night before. "Good morning, sir. We need to talk," Mariana replied, determined. Her heart raced, but she knew it was time to face the situation. Lucas frowned, a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Sure, what happened?" She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. The words came out more easily than she expected. "About the kiss, what does that mean for us?" Silence hung between them, and Mariana felt the weight of expectation grow. What would Lucas say? The air in the kitchen grew thick. Mariana stared at Lucas, her anticipation and vulnerability raw. He seemed to ponder her words, his gaze fixed on the floor for a moment before meeting her eyes. "Mariana, Lucas began, hesitantly. "I didn't expect things to evolve that way between us, but what happened was real. I have feelings for you." Lucas's confession made Mariana's heart race. She felt relieved, but doubt still surrounded her. And how does this fit into our lives? What will people think? What if this isn't what you really want? Lucas took a step forward, his expression becoming more serious. "The truth is, I don't care what people think. What matters to me is how I feel around you. You've brought a light into my life that I didn't know I needed." Mariana felt tears well up in her eyes. He had said the words she so desperately needed to hear, but her insecurity still haunted her. Society had its rules, and the difference between them seemed like an insurmountable mountain. "This is so complicated," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I'm ready to deal with the consequences." Lucas stepped closer, taking her hands in his. The physical connection was undeniable, a bond that seemed to grow stronger with every moment. "No one is ready for the consequences, Mariana. Life is full of risks. We need to decide together if we are going to face this." She looked down at their clasped hands, the feel of his warmth filling her with courage. "So, what do you suggest?" Lucas hesitated, his expression softening. "I want to get to know you better. We need to have an honest conversation about who we are and what we want. But most of all, we need to find a way to deal with this together." Mariana nodded, determination growing within her. "I want this. I'm willing to try, but we need to be careful." With a tender smile, Lucas replied, "Let's take it one step at a time. How about we go out again tonight?" The idea excited her, but caution was still present. "Yes, we will, but please, let's keep this between us for now. I don't want things to get complicated before we understand the situation better." "Deal," Lucas said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. The rest of the day was a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Mariana busied herself with her tasks, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling in her stomach. At the same time, she felt a new hope. What had once seemed like a distant dream was now coming true. As evening fell, Mariana prepared herself carefully, choosing an outfit that made her feel confident. Looking in the mirror, she saw not just the maid she had been, but a woman with dreams, hopes, and desires. The restaurant Lucas had chosen was cozy, with soft lights and an intimate atmosphere. As she walked in, she felt her heart race at the sight of him, waiting anxiously. Lucas was already at the table, and his smile made her feel instantly at ease. "You look amazing," Lucas commented, standing up to pull out her chair. Mariana smiled, feeling valued. The conversation flowed easily again. They shared stories about their childhoods, their fears and aspirations. Mariana spoke about her family's struggles, while Lucas revealed his own insecurities, far from the image of a successful man that many believed they knew. "I feel so pressured sometimes," he said, his gaze far away. The expectation of being perfect for everyone. Mariana watched him, feeling more and more connected to him. It was refreshing to see Lucas open up like this, revealing that behind his confidence, there was vulnerability. "We all face pressures. Life is hard, but that doesn't mean we can't support each other," she said, trying to comfort him. The conversation continued, but at the same time, Mariana couldn't ignore the reality that loomed over them. What would happen if people found out? What if things fell apart? After dinner, Lucas took her for a walk under the stars. The sky was clear and the air was fresh. It was a perfect moment, but the pressure of doubt was still there. "Mariana, can I be honest with you?" Lucas said, stopping to look at her. "Sure. What are you thinking?" "I want this to work. I want you to know that I'm willing to face whatever comes my way. But I need your help." Mariana looked into his eyes, feeling the depth of his words. "I want it to work too. But what if we can't? What if all this ends in pain? We can't predict the future, but we can decide how we want to act now. What matters is that we're together, and we'll face this side by side," Lucas replied, determined. Mariana was touched by his sincerity. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but Lucas's strength encouraged her to face the challenges. "I'm willing to try. We'll face this together," she stated, her determination renewed. With those words, they sealed a silent commitment. The journey was just beginning, but the connection between them grew stronger and stronger, ready to face whatever the future held. The weeks passed, and Mariana and Lucas's relationship blossomed amidst the chaos of expectations. They found ways to meet furtively, hiding their exchanges of glances and laughter from others, as if the world were watching a spectacle that only they knew. Their love grew, but so did their fear, as it became increasingly difficult to keep their secret. Mariana knew that this situation couldn't last forever. There were rumors circulating in the mansion, little comments that made her uneasy. During breakfast, when she heard the servants comment on the chemistry between her and Lucas, a knot of worry began to form in her stomach. She needed to be careful. A simple word could change everything. One afternoon, while organizing the mansion's library, she was approached by one of the other servants, the friendly Rosa, who always seemed to be everywhere at once. "Mariana, you and Lucas have been so close lately. What's going on?" Rosa asked, with a knowing smile. Mariana felt her face heat up. It was an innocent question, but her mind raced with possible answers. What could she say? The truth was too risky, and lying seemed just as difficult. "We're just working on some projects together," Mariana said, trying to keep her voice light, but her insecurity was evident. Rosa arched an eyebrow, clearly not convinced. "Yeah, sure. But everyone notices. The boss is different, happier, you know?" Mariana forced a smile, but her heart was heavy. She didn't want people to see Lucas differently, not before they were ready to deal with what they were building together. At that moment, the pressure of keeping the secret became unbearable. That night, as she prepared for yet another date with Lucas, Mariana decided she needed to talk to him about the rumors. She needed them to be on the same page. When Lucas arrived, the tension was palpable in the air. "Lucas, we need to talk," she said, trying to hide the nervousness in her voice. He looked at her with curiosity and concern. What happened? It's about what's going on between us. I've heard some gossip, and I'm starting to worry. People are noticing. We can't keep this a secret much longer. Lucas sighed, seeming to understand the gravity of the situation. I knew this would happen. Life in the mansion is full of gossip, and people are quick to judge. Mariana sat down next to him, her heart heavy. I don't want this to become a scandal. It could put us in a difficult situation. What do you suggest? Lucas asked, his expression serious. She hesitated, thoughts swirling in her head. We need to be honest with the people around us, or at least those we trust. That will give us some control over the situation. I agree. But who do you think we should tell first? Lucas asked, weighing his options. I trust Rosa. She is discreet and has always been nice to me. If we tell her, maybe we can keep things from getting out of hand, Mariana suggested. Lucas nodded, and the tension began to ease between them. Then let's do it. But we need to make sure we're ready for the consequences. The conversation made them feel more connected, and Mariana felt a new wave of hope. They were ready to face the world together, but there was still a long way to go. The next day, Mariana met Rosa during her work break. Her heart was racing as she pondered how to approach the subject. When Rosa showed up, Mariana plucked up the courage. Rosa, can I talk to you for a moment? She said, pulling her to a more private corner. Sure, what happened? Rosa asked, her gaze curious. Mariana took a deep breath, her voice shaking slightly. I need to tell you something about me and Lucas. Rosa stood silently, waiting. Mariana knew she was about to open the door to a world of reactions and questions, but there was no turning back. We are together. What happened between us is not just a rumor. I really like him, Mariana confessed, her vulnerability on the surface. Rosa's gaze changed to one of surprise, but there was no judgment. Wow, I didn't expect that. But are you happy? Yes, but I'm worried about what people will think. And I don't want this to become a problem for him or me. Rosa smiled, and Mariana felt relieved. I'm not the type to spread gossip. I'll keep this to myself, and if anyone asks, I won't say anything. Rosa's words were a balm to Mariana's soul. She knew there were still challenges ahead, but now she had an ally. At the same time, Rosa's words also reminded her that reactions could be unexpected and difficult to deal with. As the days passed, the pressure only increased. Mariana and Lucas continued to meet in secret, but each moment was tinged with anxiety. The weight of expectations and the curious looks from the house began to become oppressive, and she knew that the truth would be revealed sooner or later. What once seemed like a fairy tale now turned into a dilemma. Mariana realized that courage was not just about following her heart, but also about facing the repercussions that her choices would bring. The atmosphere in the mansion was tense. Gossip about Mariana and Lucas was rampant, and the heavy atmosphere seemed to envelop every corner of the house. Mariana could no longer ignore the meaningful glances from other employees and the whispered conversations that seemed to grow louder by the day. The pressure was becoming unbearable. It was at one of the lunches that the inevitable confrontation happened. While everyone was gathered in the dining room, a new employee, a young man named Pedro, who had recently been hired, decided to try his hand at a joke. So, Mariana, I heard that you have a special relationship with the boss. He's so happy he could fly. Pedro laughed, and the others' laughter echoed through the room. Mariana felt her face burn. The joke seemed harmless, but to her, it was like a blow. She didn't know whether to laugh or defend herself. What bothered her even more was the way Lucas looked at her, as if he wanted to intervene, but was trapped in his own silence. It's just a rumor, Pedro. You know how people like to make up stories, Lucas said, trying to change the course of the conversation, but his words were not enough to silence the laughter. Mariana looked at Lucas, seeking support in his eyes, but saw the frustration reflected in his gaze. The situation was getting out of control. She couldn't stay there in silence, feeling cowed and humiliated. It's not just a rumor, Mariana said, gathering courage. I'm with Lucas. What we have is not something I'm ashamed to admit. A deathly silence filled the room. All eyes turned to Mariana and Lucas, who looked surprised but relieved at the same time. The tension in the air was palpable. Wow, are you really saying that? Pedro asked, his eyes wide. You know this could get you in trouble, right? Mariana wouldn't let herself be shaken. Yes, I know, but I'm not going to hide who I am or what I feel anymore. Lucas stood up, his expression firm, and positioned himself next to Mariana. She's right. What we have is real, and we won't let your comments affect us. The air of discomfort that had previously dominated the room had now turned into a mixture of admiration and apprehension. Some employees began to murmur among themselves, while others seemed surprised by Mariana's bravery. What do you mean by causing trouble? Rosa, who was present, asked with a worried look. There's no reason for this to cause a scandal, right? Unfortunately, yes, replied Pedro, now a little more serious. Things are not that simple. You know that the world out there is not kind of relationships like that. And why should we care what the world thinks? Lucas said, his voice firm. What matters is how we feel for each other. Mariana felt Lucas's support, and this encouraged her even more. The bravery that had taken hold of her made her feel that, despite the difficulties that lay ahead, she was not alone. She knew that they would face the challenges together. If this is going to cause problems, we will face them. I will not allow fear to dictate our lives, Mariana stated, determination vibrating in her voice. Reactions in the room were mixed. Some employees, like Rosa, were supportive, while others seemed more skeptical, like Pedro, who was clearly thinking about the implications of all this. I admire your courage, Mariana, Rosa said, coming closer. It's not easy, and I want you to know that you can count on me. Lucas and Mariana looked at each other, relieved to have at least one ally. But the relief was soon followed by concern. What would come next? How would they deal with the situation now that their relationship was exposed? That night, as Mariana prepared for bed, her mind was racing. She couldn't stop thinking about the repercussions of her statement. What would the other employees think? And how would the bosses react if they found out? Lucas walked into the room, breaking her thoughts. He found her standing, staring out the window. What are you thinking? He asked, his tone soft. I'm thinking about what's going to happen now. Things have changed, and I don't know if I'm ready for it, Mariana said, vulnerability in her voice. Lucas hugged her, wrapping her in his arms. We'll get through this together, Mariana. There's nothing we can face that we can't overcome together. His presence was comforting, but Mariana's anxiety still lingered. She knew the fight was just beginning. The society they lived in was not kind, and her position in the house was now at risk. But something inside her urged her to move forward. You're right. We'll face this together. Mariana replied, determined. She felt a surge of strength wash over her. Being with Lucas was more than an act of rebellion. It was an act of love. What they had was precious, and they couldn't let it be destroyed by the words of others. With this determination, Mariana prepared herself for the battle to come. The confrontation had already begun, and now she needed to be strong enough to stand her ground.